Coffee Pot Conversations.
Bonjour et bienvenue to Coffee Pot Conversations, a podcast about Paris, filmed in various locations to bring you questionable audio quality. My name is Paul, and I thought I'd give a new intro to the one you're about to see, an additional intro, if you will. Well, if I did, and I did, because I wanted to. The reason being, there just wasn't enough energy for those people rejoining or starting from the beginning. So, yep, it's the beginning of season 5, episode 5.1. It's here. Welcome back. Oh yeah, grab a coffee. For those of you listening, I've just taken a sip of coffee. For those of you viewing, you would have noticed I've taken a sip of coffee. Anyway, here's the proper intro.
Coffee Pot Conversations.
Bonjour et bienvenue to Coffee Pot Conversations, the podcast that says welcome back after a month off. No applause, not even a dodgy sound effect, but here we are, we've made it. Season 5, 2026, marvellous. What do you want to know? I can tell you that I went to Paris in December with Nev, sort of celebrate her birthday, which is quite nice. She never really gets a birthday mention because she's in that middle part of the gap. So if anybody wants a birthday shout out, let me know. Birthdays at anenglishmaninparis.blog. Yes, I know, anenglishmaninparis.blog. Well, it connects to my Instagram account, An Englishman in Paris blog, which connects to my blog, anenglishmaninparis.blog. Confused? You hadn't even heard the start of it. But you did, because it was Rory, my eldest, singing the jingle. And that was the beginning of Coffee Pot Conversations. Anyway, for those of you that don't know, this is a multifaceted attack on the public, so apologies. Yes, it's not just a jingle, Dad. It's also available as a podcast, which is what you're listening to now, unless you're listening to it on my YouTube little story part or my post, in which case you're wondering why I'm doing it. So I will be putting notes everywhere. I'll be splashing about for those on Instagram to let you know that I also do full podcasts. And for those of you watching or listening, well, you're aware of it, but you're aware I've got an Instagram account. It's not great. 2025 will see me posting more photos of Paris because, that's what I should do. I'm going to try and keep my blog updated because it's, been a while. So I have been writing, just not really been keeping it updated. I haven't been writing that much, I'm not going to lie. I did do my Christmas entry, so that will be up shortly, as well as a few beforehand. Moving on. I'm looking down at my notes, like a little post-it note. I've done welcome back. Any topic to cover? Yeah, season 5. I've decided that I'm going to go back to my old monologious, my monologue episodes, whereby I'm just reading. It's fine if you're listening, because I'm just reading, but if you're watching, then you're going to see me looking at the screen, which really isn't great, because the screen's here, the camera's here, and I've been looking just behind at my my script, because I write everything down and read it. Not always easy. But that's that. So if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere else, you're not going to know what you're looking at, which is why previous seasons 3 and 4, it slightly changed as I went. But I'm now going to go back to my roots, as they say. A little bit more high-tech. I'm using a camera, video camera, as opposed to my phone. You can see I've got a microphone here, so that's great as well. Anyway, that's that. Welcome to those that haven't been here before. It's 3 minutes of me rambling so far. I'm going to break into the news shortly. Then we have the main topic of the conversation, which this week is, I have recorded, it's Paris and her villages. There we go. So it's going to be split into 2 because it was quite a lengthy episode, and I'm going to try and condense my episodes just to make them a little bit easier for everyone. I'm going to try and aim for the half an hour mark. So it is a very abrupt finish. I'll pick it up in 2 weeks' time, or next episode as you like. and that's going to be part 2, Paris and her villages, and it will just come in a real random splicing section. Splices. Yeah, I'm gonna try and keep the visuals as exciting as I can without over egging the cake, so to speak. Little nod out there to Frankie. Frankie, see me Christmas. I used to work with Frankie, she is the first friend of the show. And talking to people I used to work with, it was Vonnie's birthday. There you go, I've mentioned birthdays again. Previous episodes, previous seasons, I've always mentioned birthdays at the end. Anyway, you may be wondering what all this noise is. Well, I'm actually in my favourite coffee shop in London. And there's some coffee shop noises. The noises before was a barista coming out the lavatory, great. And his whirring is someone doing some whirring kind of concoction for a beverage, one would suspect. Music to my ears, it's gone quiet. Talking of quiet, there's me, 2 baristas, and a customer who's just about to leave the shop. But what can I tell you? Early days. That's about it for now that I can think of. You notice I've glanced down again. I've got I'll show you 4 post-it notes. Yep. So that's about that one. That's this. Not very exciting for those of you listening, but bear in mind you chose to listen, and that's that. So, yep, the episode will cut off around about the Passy mark. I think my final edit was I didn't include anything about Passy the second time because I revisit Passy. I just did air quote marks for those of you listening. Yeah, I will be doing another section of this which I'll be whacking up afterwards so I can then use it as an Instagram story, an Instagram post for my dad, because he didn't actually know what I did. He just knows the jingle because he hears it on Instagram when I post up about each episode. Anyway, it's time for the news, and yeah, I don't think he's ready because it's the first one back. First episode of 2026, he had a month off. I don't think he's ready. So let's see if we can catch him a little bit on the hop, so to speak. Paul, it's over to you. Thanks, Paul. 3 women stabbed in Paris metro. In Paris on 26 December 2025, which was Boxing Day, a man, they say allegedly, but I'm sure he did, stab 3 women at separate stations on Metro Line 3, République, Artemetière and Opéra. It was during a busy holiday afternoon. Police used CCTV and mobile phone geolocation to track and arrest a 25-year-old suspect in the Val d'Oise suburbs later that day. Prosecutors say the women suffered minor injuries and terrorism has been ruled out. Investigators described the incident as likely down to the act of a mentally unstable individual. Russian journalist falls to his death from Paris apartment. A Russian journalist living in Paris was found dead after falling from the window of his 7th floor apartment on the 7th of January 2026, local police confirmed. It's also my uncle's birthday. The journalist was described as exiled, although details about his work or reasons for exile were not disclosed in the initial report. Police have not released a motive, and an official investigation is underway, with authorities treating the death as unexplained at this stage, pending further inquiries. This incident sparked international interest because it echoes broader patterns of unexpected deaths of critics and journalists, though no evidence currently ties it to foul play. Iberia flight diverted to Luton due to weather. Severe winter weather around Paris on the 7th of January, which is also still my uncle's birthday, forced an Iberia flight IAB 569 from Madrid to Paris Orly to divert twice. First, it circled due to snow and one-way restrictions, then was directed toward Heathrow in London. With fuel running low, the Airbus A321 eventually landed at London Luton Airport, which isn't in London, about 250 miles from Paris, leaving passengers stranded far from their intended destination. The disruption highlights ongoing storm-related travel chaos affecting European airports. And to be honest, landing at Luton, when you're expecting to go to Paris, you go to Luton. It's I can't even draw comparisons, but yeah, Luton's just like an upper-class Slough from The Office, the BBC version, not the American Office. Louvre books damaged in water leak. Just weeks after the high-profile jewel heist at the Louvre, a water leak in late November damaged between 300 to 400 historic volumes in the museum's Egyptology. Egyptology in the museum's Egypt department. Most of the research books consulted by specialists, not ancient artefacts. The leak occurred when a valve in an ageing heating system malfunctioned, and staff say items will be dried and restored. The incident has renewed concerns about infrastructure maintenance at the world's most visited museum. Emily in Paris Season 6 update. According to LUK and other mainstream sources including Instagram, Emily in Paris is returning for a 6th season, continuing the romantic and comedic portrayal of an American in Paris, navigating work and the love in a city of light. Storylines are expected to explore further cultural clashes, fashion moments and Parisian settings as the cast returns to shoot scenes in and around the French capital. So, nothing new really. Egg shortage in Paris shops. Across Paris, shops have reported an unexpected shortage of eggs in many grocery stores. Retailers cite disrupted supply chains, production slowdowns in nearby farms, and logistical issues as the likely causes. This has led to empty shelves and rising prices. This is a problem because not only January the 6th, but February the 2nd do rely on crepes. Finally, man pulls sword from Joan of Arc statue. In a bizarre daytime incident in Paris, a man physically removed a sword from the iconic Joan of Arc statue. This is the only Joan of Arc statue in Paris where she holds a sword. Authorities say there was no known political motivation and the individual was detained. The historic statue itself was not significantly damaged. This unusual act sparked curiosity among locals and prompted a police response to secure the monument. Specialists are currently examining the sword to see whether it needs to be recast or if it can be reset.
Coffee Pot Conversations.
I remember a few years back I was walking through Paris, don't even know where I was, and walked down one street and I saw a little bit of a market. Now that I've said this, I think I'm starting to remember where I was. I think I was just the other side of Champs-Élysées, the Arc de Triomphe end, tucked on the right hand side, round about Avenue Rugran, that sort of area. I think I may be wrong, I'll check this out shortly, possibly. I probably won't, but I may do. But anyway, I was walking through there and thought, well, that's a nice bit of, like a market, that type of thing, and all of a sudden I turn a corner and boom, I'm like a totally different part of town. Yeah, I'm still in the same district, the same arrondissement. I thought, that's really weird. I got to thinking, I thought, there's something more to it. Now, as I've discovered throughout my own little Parisian historical career, I discover things and I make notes as part of my blog, and then later on realise that I'm only going over things that people have already mentioned that I was unaware of. One of these things is about being a flâneur. I remember I was sitting in a cafe, restaurant type place waiting for Nev to turn up, and I was making notes saying how, I mill around and that Paris is full of people milling around, yet in London everyone's busy. But I still like to mill around whilst in London, and I remember making notes, and a couple of years later it's like, oh, it's a flâneur. I thought that's really interesting. So one of these things that happened with this part, I thought each arrondissement is different of and about itself. So you have one arrondissement, and it turns out they're actually broken up into little sub-districts within itself. Oh, and that's a bit fascinating, but more than that, some of these arrondissements weren't actually parts of Paris. Now I know Paris has to expand and grow and stuff like that, and it's to be expected, but these little parts within the parts possibly have been turned from little villages in France around the Paris region, and have been swallowed up into Paris as is today, which I thought was quite fascinating. And that happens with London, you've got inner London and greater London, central London, outer London, whatever they deem to call it. And as time goes on, cities do expand, and Paris has now got its Parisian expansion in place. It sort of happens in London still. I mean, we have London Luton Airport or London Southend Airport, but they're not London at all. Well, they're well out, in my opinion at least, they're well out of London. Even outside of the M25. Or in Paris, it would be classed as a Périphérique, which, as we know, I sometimes go and venture across or out of. One of my favourite entries was when I was in the 14th and I cut across the Périphérique in my favourite little Portuguese boulangerie. Anyway, these villages such as Montmartre and Belleville, probably two of the most famous ones. Yeah, I'd say they're probably the most famous. Maybe Passy as well, I'm not too sure. Anyway, they were part of Baron Haussmann's big scheme of things to draw them in. I'm not going to go down that Haussmann thought process of the archaeology, architecture of it all, but I just wanted to raise the point that they've been changed in Paris. So Paris is extended, and we know the 20 arrondissements, which are great. The Escargot, the snail-shaped, it's mentioned many times on many podcasts, this one included. And yeah, it does work out like a snail shell from one in the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4, now administratively central Paris, but it's still 1, 2, 3, 4. They're on, people call it the right bank. I would say north of the water, and the first is just above the island and slightly to the left of Place Vendôme. Then you have the second, going around on an outer circle down to the third, and then the fourth hits the river again on the left bank or south of the water. And we have 5, 6 and 7 going from east to west. That's from the right to the left. That's Jardin des Plantes, the 5th, and L'Odéon on the 6th, and the Eiffel Tower on the west. Jumping back across the river into the 8th, we have the Champs-Élysées, all the way through Faubourg Le Havre. Cutting around pretty much in line with the 1st and the 2nd, we now have the 9th. To the right of that, to the east, is the 10th. And then coming around the circle again, touching the 3rd is the 11th, even further down to the 12th, where we have Passy, which is actually one of the villages. Then back to the left bank, and we have the 13th, carrying west towards the Eiffel Tower. We have the 13th and 14th, my favourite, and then the 15th, and then jumping back over the west or the right bank, which is now on the left of Paris. We have the 16th, the 17th at 10 o'clock on your clock, and at 12 o'clock, right at the top, we have Montmartre, and the 18th, then La Chapelle, then we have the 19th at 1, 2 o'clock-ish, and then the 20th arrondissement, we have Belleville, Canton Père Lachaise. And they're the 20 arrondissements. The 12th is Bois de Vincennes, and the 16th contains Bois de Boulogne. Now these two are outside the Périphérique, which is fine, but they're still actually classed as parts of the 12th and 16th arrondissement, and I've actually ran through both for the Paris marathons. I've done that twice, and they're just woods, but they do contain some interesting places which aren't going to be discussed in this episode, but Bois de Vincennes and Bois de Boulogne will definitely have their own episodes later on. If we have any experts out there on either of those, let me know and get in touch, we can have a chat. So that's a new setup from 1860 onwards, which again, we're going to cover horsemen in a separate episode. But if you look at the first, just above the island, the Île de la Cité, the larger of the two islands, and it just works around as of now, 1, 2, 3, 4, south, 5, 6, 7, north, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, south, 13, 14, 15, north, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. However, in the olden days, we did have something very, very different. We had just 12 arrondissements. And these obviously range from numbers 1 to 12. Now, it wasn't quite as easy going as Escargot or the nice outwardly spiraling number system. So we had in the top left starting, so we were talking right bank of the river, but on the left-hand side. So if we're looking at a clock, 10 o'clock, we had the first arrondissement. Moving around on the outside of the circle, we then had the second, we had the third, the fourth dropped back, so where sort of the first arrondissement is now was the fourth, and the fifth was sort of cutting back upwards towards the third and stretching out into the 10th. So if we're looking again at a clock, we're now at 1 o'clock, the sixth arrondissement was at 2 o'clock, the seventh cut back into the river, so it's sort of cutting half of the new third and half of the new fourth. That's the seventh arrondissement. The eighth old arrondissement moved out to the east, which covers the 11th, and then we cut back in for the 9th. So the sort of fourth arrondissement is the right bank, but just the intersection. So say the fourth arrondissement now was the 9th and 10th. It goes all the way left bank, where the 7th is, and it moves through the 6th and the 5th for arrondissements 11 and 12. The way the number structure worked, they sort of went west to east and then north to south. So we would have sort of had 1, 2 and 3, and then drop down 4, dropping up, lifting up, 5, 6, 7 going down, and then 8 sort of coming back in, but then to reset west of Paris on the left bank, south of the water, began left to right, west to east, 10, 11, 12. To continue that, they would have had to start in the 16th arrondissement, making the 16th new arrondissement 13, and 14 would have carried on 15. However, they were to disperse and moving around, and then they would have got back to where the new 15th is, or the existing, the current 15th would have been the next set of numbers, once they determined where it was going to go. So possibly even 21, depending on how they were going to splice the city up. However, the posh residents of the 16th did not wish to be part of the unlucky 13th. The middle class locals weren't happy. Napoleon was already applying political pressure. And this is a whole different situation, a whole different conversation. Napoleon will be it the third, and the little of the second, as well as the first. They're going to be separate episodes. But I don't want to go into that. Not yet. All this was all taking place around that time of the Napoleon III, but the mayor Passy found a solution, and that's when the snail came into effect, using number 1 as a centre and working its way outwards like a clockwise spiral. Boom! That's how we came up with the arrondissement number system. which was in 1860 and onwards. So that's the number system, how it was, how it is. It's so much easier geographically. Just check on Google Maps, you'll find everything that you need. Google Maps probably isn't the best place because they just show you the map, which I've actually created for myself. But French villages into Paris. So it's a saved list, and if you want it, you can just email me and ask for it, and I'll share it across to your email. It's coffeepotter.englishmaninparis.blog. But enough of that. So these villages, I've been to a few, and I haven't been to a few actually. I've just picked up on 10, actually 12, but 10 which I thought I would. I don't know whether I'd looked into them or discussed them. I haven't been to all of them. Anyway, I'm looking at this map. 1, 2, 3 and 4 I've definitely been to. Might have cut through some of the others and not realised. So ones I've been to. Yep, Montmartre. You know, it's Montmartre. So we've got Moulin Rouge and we've got Escargot. There's the big parts of Montmartre, as well as obviously the vineyard. And at the time of episode 1.3, French abroad. And then we've got Belleville, which I stayed nearby with Nev when I did the second Paris Marathon. And we had the white strawberries, which I know Nev listening to this, she's already smiling, just relaxing. But I also had very nearby to that episode, 1.2.5, April in Paris. And that was done around the area. And that was an area that we ventured into myself. I never had a little walk around, but it was at night and didn't really get much of a feel for it when I went back during the day for the interview. It did feel very villagey across the street, but it suddenly changed and it went from the 20th to the 19th. It was like, ooh. I actually did feel that the 19th was slightly more built up. Also, a village brought in, but that's that. Passy, I know for 2 reasons. One, when I've caught the bus into Paris, it stops at the bus station, that's where I get out. But also, myself and Nev walked through there for the first marathon that I did when we stayed in the 13th. Just check back with the interview I did with Press Maxim. We walked through and it was actually just off, I think, just before the halfway mark, and we cut through a turning. So once I'd run around the Bois de Vincennes, I came out, saw Nev wave, I think I gave her a bottle of water. So that's Passy. Starting at the top, we have Montmartre up in the 18th, and it was at the time artistic and bohemian. It's full of vineyards and windmills, nice relaxed painters and writers, performers and cafes. And they still actually have a vineyard there, which is open for their wine festival in October every year. And they produce a few bottles of wine, which I've not had, but I have heard it's not great. But you know, it's Parisian wine from the top of the hill. And the windmills, depending on how we look at things, there's sort of, I want to say 2 windmills. We have the Moulin Rouge at the bottom, and we have Moulin de la Galette on the way up, which is, it was captured by Pierre Auguste Renoir in the dance of the Moulin de la Galette. So that's interesting. And that's on the road sort of up or down, depending on which way you're going. The square at the top, which was mentioned in response to one of my questions from the first season, Charlie Jane 1, I believe, answered, in the cafe at Place de Terre. Now, this, depending on who you talk to, local legend, urban myth, is where the word bistro first came into prominence. All to do with the Russians. I don't want to go into that, but the word bistro meaning quick in Russian, as we all know, and that's how it came about from the Russian soldiers. But this is going to be covered in another episode. Just bear that in mind for when you're listening to future episodes. So 2 windmills, as well as in fact Café de Deux Moulins, Café of the 2 windmills, which I've been to with Nev, and that was during the November interviews. It was just before going to visit Christian from Paris Abroad, episode 1.3. Popped in there needing something to eat, didn't realise at the time it's actually from that Amélie film. But once we were in, he was like, oh, so I've got a few photos of that. And that was quite nice. So we've got a film set, a diner set in the 50s. Was the food good? This isn't a review. Food was alright, it wasn't bad. Service felt a bit rushed. Almost like people were going specifically because it was at Amélie Cafe. That's not why we were in there. I just have to reiterate, it was only once we were in there that I actually recognised it. I'm going to be honest, when I watched the film for the first time, I did fall asleep. So, sorry Nev, but yeah, I'll watch it again at some point. That's not a problem. So this is Montmartre that was absorbed into Paris. It also got Escargot, which Jasper did mention in his episode 1.9, a conversation with Jasper. We all know about Escargot, so again that's more than likely going to be another episode all by itself. So that is, as I said, Montmartre. Montmartre, let's pop back to Belleville and explain the fact that it is a hilly area, a hilly part of Paris. But Belleville has little market gardens, and at the time it's a very simple lifestyle, very community and agriculturally based. It's now themed as a vibrant, multicultural, diverse community. They have artistic events and local markets with a lively street culture. That's exciting. So, Chiron was very working class, had a solidarity feel about it. It's full of craftspeople, artisans, local commerce and small businesses. It's still got a strong community, a friendly artistic flair. It's very diverse, and apparently the community is very vibrant. That's the 20th, and this is the south of the 20th, where Belleville was at the top. Chiron is down at the bottom.
Coffee Pot Conversations.
And that was episode 5.1, Paris and her villages. Excuse me, mouth is dry. Great coffee. Great coffee shop. Anyway, so that was episode 5.1, Paris and her villages. You will notice a complete cut down and a little bit of camera movage. Not like that, because that's just my face detector. It's just me trying to keep things exciting for those of you watching, rather than just having this me staring at you. Slightly off centre with a bloodshot eye, which I've had another one since recording that episode. That was recording au Père Tranquille, just outside of Les Halles, Westfield, which incidentally, Les Halles, I don't believe is a liaison, and I cover that in an episode yet to be recorded. It's not even finished yet. It's about Baudelaire. So I briefly cover liaisons in the French language, which will be another episode, me learning the French language. Great. So this is the conclusion section. And that's it, really. Yeah, not a great thing to talk about here. It's very quiet in a coffee shop. Let me quickly show you. Watch. I love this camera. So you can see they still got a Christmas tree up. Oh, naughty, naughty. And if anyone can tell me where this coffee shop is, then email in 5.1 at anenglishmaninparis.blog. Let me know where the coffee shop is. There's no prizes, but I will shout your name out at a later episode, because I've got a bit of a back catalogue. So if you listen in 2-3 years' time and you get to this episode, just let me know. I will say that these the backgrounds, let me flick through again. The backgrounds here, they do change every so often, and I'm in this coffee shop fairly often, fairly regularly. Frequently, yeah, regularly, not frequently. That does change. We'll zoom me out. So, yeah, I don't know if that's a clue or not. It's a game for you. Anyway, for the first time in this season, season 5 of Coffee Pot Conversations, hosted by an Englishman in Paris, Jasper. Nope. I ruined that one, didn't I? For the first time in 2026 for season 5. It's time for Jasper's jingle.
Coming up on Coffee Pot Conversations.
We have episode 5.2, Paris and her villages, part 2. It's just the second part to what you've just heard. I covered the rest of the villages that were pulled into Paris. Doesn't get more exciting than that. I've got the rest of the season to go, so there we go. What else is coming up? I will try it. So I've got a bit of loose skin there. I will, not anymore though. I will try and get my interview. I had an interview. I had the first part of an interview, which was unfortunately cut short, and I'm looking at finding a time and a place to get that part 2. That will be coming out hopefully for this season. I do need to get back in touch with the chap. Little clue there, but really it's no clue, because it could be absolutely anyone. And that's that. So I'm just checking me post-its. That one's gone. That one's gone. Oh yeah, talk about Louis XIV. That's, I think, going to be cut into 3 sections again. Very random sections of Louis XIV. I'll start up at 5.2 at Passy, and that's it. So yep, call to actions. Like, follow, subscribe, all the rest of the blah blahs. But what I do need to do now is to say, Dad, follow the link through to the podcast. You actually know what I spend my spare time doing, rather than just sitting on the Xbox or talking to myself in the bedroom. Now, Rory, it's over to you.
Coffee pot conversations.